Hi guys, I hope you had a lovely half term and you enjoyed all that sunshine. We've got another art lesson today, and today we're going to look at an artist called Claude Monet. Now, he was most famous for being part of the Impressionist movement, and that's a style of painting where it's almost unfinished. So the paints are put on the paper, not blended. So what you need to do is you need to step back from an impressionist painting and let your eye do the blending for you. Now, there's two activities, one for the slightly older children, one for the younger children, but having said that, both activities are good fun. There is, hopefully on your email, there's a link to a short video about Monet. It's quite interesting. We're going to look at two different paintings. We're going to look at the Nymphias at Giverny, which basically means the water lilies at Giverny Gardens. And then we're going to look at the water lily pond, which has got a bridge over it that's very beautiful. So anyway, enjoy the activity. We're going to have a look at painting some water lilies. And the most important thing about Impressionism to remember is that you need to allow your eye to do the blending, not the paintbrush. So we're going to do some water, and what we're going to do is we're going to have multiple colours on our paintbrush. So you can have a little bit of white and a little bit of blue, and you're going to just dab them on the brush and then make sideways marks. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to blend the paint too much so it's all one colour. You want to be able to see the different colours, and some of it's thicker and some of it's thinner. You want to keep those, keep all those colours separate. So Monet was very famous for just using dabs or blocks with his paintbrush, and he worked quite quickly. He worked on huge canvases, and he worked outside as well. So he was working quite quickly. And I'm going to change brush to a slightly fatter brush. The brush I'm using's got a flat end, but if you haven't got one, don't panic. You use whatever brushes you have. So you can see that they're almost like rectangles of colour. And once I've covered a bit of white, then I don't go back over it. Okay. Now in a minute I'm going to put the video on to twice the speed, because otherwise we'll be sat here for a long time watching me put paint on the paper. And there we go. So I'm going very fast there. But that doesn't mean you need to do it fast. I'm just doing this to save time on the video. Spend as long as you like on this. The longer you spend, obviously, the better it'll be. Vary your colours a little bit in blocks. So you might have a patch with some more green in it, or a patch with some more red in it, or a patch more white. Some of it needs to be lighter and some of it's darker, because what we're doing is creating water, and water reflects the colour of the sky in tiny ripples. So it's not all one even colour. And like all of the painting we've done so far, if you're doing water or landscape, keep the brush strokes going across the page, not up and down. So if you're going to add some red, which is great, make sure you do that at the outside edges. We don't want the red in the centre, because the centre is where the water lilies are going to be, and we don't want the eye being distracted. So keep the darker colours to the outside edges and keep the centre lighter. Okay, once we finish the water, we're going to start looking at putting the reflections of the trees in. Now in this painting, there aren't any trees. You can't see the trees. All you can see are the reflections of the trees. So again, it's going to be in ripples, so we're going to use exactly the same technique of using little tiny rectangles or blocks of paint, and not blending the paint too much. Now this time the brush strokes are actually going downwards rather than across. because we want them to look like they're on the surface of the water. So I've got some darker greens and some lighter greens, some yellow and some brown in there. Again, not blending the colours, don't mix them up, just have the different colours on the brush and let the colours sit separately on the page. And having done a certain amount of this, I decided that actually I needed to go back to the big brush, so I stick with the same brush that you'd already been using for the water. Okay, you'll see me change in a minute. So again, I've fast forwarded this video, so I'm not actually working at this speed. Take your time, enjoy it, enjoy working with the paint, enjoy making different textures with the paint and different patches of colour. Some darker and some lighter, some with some yellow, some with some brown. Now, if you haven't got the same colours as me, don't worry. As with all of this artwork, use whatever you've got, the closest that you can find. I'm actually quite enjoying seeing all your artwork done with different paints and different papers and different types of brushes. It makes it quite interesting. So we don't want straight lines. I'd kind of do longer bits down the left-hand side and the right-hand side, and some uneven shapes through the middle, because they're trees, and that's what trees do. They're not very even, are they? And you can see there that I've got lots of different coloured greens in there, and yellows and the browns, and it makes it interesting textures. I'm going to put some darker colours there, and I didn't have a dark green, so I'm adding some brown and a little bit of black to a tiny bit of black to my green to make it a little bit darker. Really go easy on that black, because otherwise it would just look too dark. There you go, there's the trees, the reflection of the trees. So you can see my palette, and I've not mixed the colours up too much, but you can see where I'm putting the brush into lots of different colours at the same time. So we're going to put the water lilies in now, and as you saw then, I put green and yellow on my brush, so half and half. Now the green needs to be on the bottom side, the darker side. You can see there that actually I've got that the wrong way around now. I do correct it a bit later on. Put the green on the darker side and the yellow on the top side. And again, we're just putting these rectangular blocks of colour in. These are the water lilies, so they're green circular leaves that sit on the surface of the water. And I'm putting some up there as well, because remember, those are actually only the reflections of trees, they're not actually the trees. So because they're going to be further away, we want smaller dabs. So you can see I'm using the side of my brush rather than the thick way. I'm making them slightly thinner because they're further away from us and they need to be smaller. So now I'm going to put some darker green on the bottom parts of each of my water lilies. Which is actually correcting a mistake I made earlier. That's a nice thing about painting though, isn't it? So the last thing we need in our painting is some water lilies. So what I've done is I've got white and yellow, and I'm using the edge of the brush to make 5 lines really. So 1 to each side and then 3, almost in a fan shape. It's probably easier if the paint below is a little bit drier now because you want the yellow and white to show through. It doesn't have to look exactly like a flower. Remember, we're going to let our eye do the blending for us. So as long as we've got the right colours in there, your eye will do it for you. And you don't have to copy my shape completely here. You can put your water lilies wherever you want. If you put your little water lilies further back where the reflections of the trees are, your water lilies clearly need to be smaller because they're further away. And they need to be near the lily pads. And the final touch to our water lilies is we need a little bit of pink or red, just a tiny dab in the middle of each flower. And then you need to stand back and admire your work. Because the nice thing about Impressionist painting is that you actually shouldn't look at it up close. You should stand back and admire it from a distance. Now, the second activity, it's perhaps aimed at slightly younger children, but it's still good fun to have a go, even if you're one of the older children. We're going to look at the bridge over the water lilies in this one. So what I'm using there is some thin strips of masking tape, and I'm going to mask out a shape of a bridge. Now, if you don't have masking tape, you could perhaps draw a bridge on paper and cut it out, and then stick it on to your paper, or you could do the whole page with the way we're going to do it with the finger paints, and then use maybe sticks or something, or things from the garden, sticks and twigs and bits of vine, and create a bridge with natural materials. That might be a nice alternative way of doing it. Or you could paint it and then you could paint the bridge on afterwards as well. This is called masking. We're using masking tape. Sellotape doesn't work as well because it will rip the paper. Even masking tape can take the surface of the paper off a little bit, so be very careful. You might need to get your mum or dad or whoever's at home with you to give you a hand with this one. And I've fast forwarded this section because it took me quite a long time to put the bridge on. There we go, there's my bridge. It doesn't have to be too even. Now you can see there that I've got the paint on my fingers, and again I've not blended the paint on the palette. I've stuck my fingers into a variety of different colours, and then I'm going to just simply dab the paint on. Don't go back over the same space again and again, because you'll find you'll lose all those beautiful colours. It'll just go a mushy colour. So once you've done a section, then leave it, move on to another section. It doesn't matter if you've got splodges of yellow or green or blue, and later on I think I'm going to put some orange and some red in there as well. And remember, what we're doing is we're creating water which is full of lots and lots of tiny little ripples. And it's reflecting both the sky and the trees around it. And go straight over the top of your masking tape. There you go, I've added some red in that time alongside the greens and the yellows as well. But don't swirl your fingers around, so make sure you just keep dabbing. but you can carry on working nice and slowly and carefully. I'll introduce some orange there. And once you've finished doing the painting, what you need to do is very carefully peel off the masking tape. It's probably better to do it while the paint is still wet, because it's just easier, it's more malleable. If you find that your paper is starting to rip, then stop and come at the masking tape from a different angle. Again, you might need to ask for some help from a grown-up on this one. But you can see there, as I take the masking tape off, it leaves a white bridge behind. And what I've done there is I've just glued back on a couple of the little bits of paper that came off with the masking tape. And there we have it. Isn't that beautiful? Well, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. As usual, remember to send me an email with them on, and I'll do a gallery for next week. I just wanted to say as well that the last week's artwork was superb. They were beautiful, and I also really enjoyed all of the stop frame animations. They were really good fun as well. Okay, so take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.